It was the end. What excuse did I have to make? Tens of thousands of thoughts flowed in an instant. However, contrary to her worries, Byron passed by the desk where she was hiding and continued walking towards the window. Maybe it's because autumn is approaching, but it's a little cold at night. Byron closed the window and muttered to himself. He got up to close the window because he thought it was cold. After closing the window, Byron slowly returned to bed. It was only a short period of time, but to Isla, it felt like an eternity. I waited 10 years. Every time she was almost caught on a dangerous night like that, it seemed like her life expectancy was shortened by 10 years. Isla put her hand to her chest in fear and calmed her heart, which seemed like it was going to explode. I think it would be dangerous to go out right away. I guess I'll have to wait until Byron falls asleep again. It wasn't completely out yet. Byron was still awake and she was shaking, hiding under her desk. Still, he thought he had overcome the dangerous obstacle, so he closed his mouth tightly to prevent making a sound and exhaled long and deeply through his nose only. He wanted to sigh loudly, but if he did, Byron wouldn't be asleep yet and he might discover his existence. As she waited for Byron to quickly fall back asleep, she changed positions. She knew that if she continued squatting until Byron fell asleep, her legs would go numb and she wouldn't be able to return to her room. While she was sitting comfortably with her hands resting on the floor, she felt something touch her left hand. It looked like a thin piece of paper. That? He lifted the paper as carefully as he could, without making a sound, and examined the writing. It was a piece of paper with dates and place names written in rows. I think I've seen these place names somewhere. The date written on the first line corresponded to about 10 days from now. And all the place names written next to it and along it seemed familiar. And after a while, he remembered where he had seen it and was disappointed. Those were the cities I had seen on the map a while ago, along with the dates. That? It's nothing new. Isla pouted in disappointment and was about to put the newspaper down again, but she noticed something different on the map and looked at the paper again. There were words written behind the city name that could not be seen on the map. The Wild Goose Tavern, the Vineyard Inn. They were the names of businesses like bars and inns. And when Isla saw it, a memory of long ago came to her mind. She left after leaving these ruins. This is the place that made her immediately happy when she was a little girl crying after saying goodbye to the attic she loved so much. It's true. It was like that. Byron often ran away to deep forests and mountains without permission and took her to visit cities for the first and last time. And within 10 days they would move to that first city. She would say this was a phone call. When Byron suddenly woke up and was almost caught, she was afraid that he would ruin everything at any moment, but thanks to that, she was able to remember this fact. At the time, it was just fun to move from city to city and stay there every few days, but now that I thought about it, it was an incredibly suspicious experience. A person who fled even a small rural town moved to a city with a large population. The clue was that map on the wall. It was clear that they were following someone's journey from Venator to the west of the empire and back to Venator from the center. Who could it be? Maybe his parents. It wasn't entirely impossible, but it was very likely that Ophelia and Roderick weren't. They would rarely go to the west of the empire. There is one thing that I want to point out. The only thing he could think about was the young lion written on the letter. He had heard that Byron was trying to join forces to hunt. It could have been something completely unrelated to the letter, but based on the information Isla knew, it was most likely. It could be that they were following the journey of the young lion. As she organized her thoughts, time passed. If she waited a little longer, something unfortunate might happen and she wouldn't be able to return to the attic before Laura came to wake her up. So she simply kept her eyes on the desk and looked at the bed where Byron was lying. Fortunately, Byron slept without knowing anything about the world. He opened the window carefully. There was a small noise from the old hinge, but there was no movement, as if the noise was loud enough to wake Byron, who was sleeping soundly. She quickly but silently escaped from Byron's room and returned to her own room through a secret passage. Shortly after returning to the room, the dark sky began to lighten. He only closed his eyes for a moment, but it was time to get up and go to the training ground. But she wasn't very tired. Although she still had the body of a girl, she had good physical strength as she had a muscular body that had been trained through exercise for a long time. Plus last night he didn't get any results for the first time in a long time. Although he didn't find any definitive information, he was grateful that he had had time to prepare before leaving this place and heading into the city. Isla had something to prepare before leaving those ruins. That night he went to sleep early and woke up when it was still dark everywhere. He had only slept a few hours, but he felt that the fatigue had disappeared and that his head was clear. There was no clock, but judging by the shape and position of the moon, it was still a long time before the sun rose. He got out of bed, did some stretches, changed his clothes, and secretly left the room. Today's destination was not Byron's room. The place he was going was the room where his classes on clouds and toxicology were taught. As it was a room filled with deadly poison, the door was always locked, but the ventilation window was always open. And the ventilation window was large enough that Isla, who was still young, could fit through it, even if she were an adult. Well. So let's do it. He lit the lamp with a match that was always in the same place. It was a lamp that was used to boil poisonous plants. But it managed to illuminate the environment. It was bright enough for her, who was used to moving in the dark. He had memorized where and what poisonous plants were placed while taking a toxicology class during the day. He quickly took out the herbs he needed, little by little, and before he knew it, he had created a clear, thick liquid. He put the liquid into a small glass bottle the size of his little finger, closed the lid, and looked at his work with satisfaction. "Then you shouldn't have given me a laboratory like this." Isla smiled mischievously and put the glass bottle in her pocket, erasing any trace of her visit. A glass bottle of this size could have been transported secretly. In her entire life, she had never done anything that went against Byron's will. He didn't seem like a mischievous person who had reached a point of rebellion. He thought it might be too much to call it a joke, but it didn't matter. It wasn't a medicine that killed people. It was just a medicine that made people sleep for a while. In fact, Ella wanted to give the person who was going to be given this medicine poison instead of a sleeping pill, but it wasn't time yet. "Then let's go back now." After checking once more to see if he had left any traces, he turned off the lamp and escaped from the laboratory. Miss. Wake up." Isla had to wake up when Laura shook her awake. "There is a lot to prepare. You have to wake up quickly." He sat on the bed with his hair messy, rubbing his eyes and staring at Laura, who was trembling. This happened not once or twice, but several times a year, and she couldn't understand why they always made such a fuss. "Change your clothes quickly and come down. The carriage is waiting for you." "Yes, I understand it." Laura. Time passed before she realized it and the day came to leave these ruins. When Laura left her alone and fussing, Isla, who was still rubbing her sleepy eyes, moved quickly as if she had never done so before. It was to hide the sleeping pills that had been taken from a secret space the night before and hidden under the pillow. Where should I hide it? She looked through the clothes Isla had left behind, looking for a good place to hide the medicine. The ribbon shoes fit her feet so perfectly that it seemed impossible to hide them. She could have put them inside some white knee-length socks, but she thought they would stick out and be too obvious. "I guess I can hide it in my belt." There was a belt to attach the big pink ribbon to the back of her waist, so she thought she could put it there secretly. From now on, every time she changed her clothes, it would be important to hide it somewhere else without being seen, but for now, she felt relieved. After safely hiding the glass bottle, he looked around the loving attic for a while. It wasn't a very good memory, but it felt strange to be separated again from the attic that had briefly provided him comfort during his childhood. Bye-bye. Thanks to you, I'm fine. Although it was somewhat embarrassing to say goodbye to a space that was not alive and was only made of rocks, Isla knocked on the door of the secret passage that allowed her to come out every night and say hello. For some reason, she wanted to do that. Now was the time to leave this place.